Hi there, I'm Anselma. I found out my dad left $2 million to my sister in his will, and I got nothing. No explanation, no warning, just erased. But the truth? That was just the beginning. They drained my bank accounts, used my name for loans, spread lies behind my back, and when I finally stood up for myself, they said I was the problem. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a pattern, one that had been building quietly for years. What would you do if the people who raised you turned you into a stranger in your own story? Would you stay quiet, or would you fight back? Let's talk about it. The paper didn't even look important at first, just another envelope in a messy pile of tax forms, warranties, and junk mail. I'd come over to help my dad sort through it all, like I always did every October. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon in Fort Collins, the kind of day that makes the trees look like they're on fire with gold and rust. My parents' house, warm and cluttered with memories, smelled like old candles and cinnamon. Familiar, harmless. I wasn't expecting to be blindsided. While I was flipping through the stack, looking for property tax documents, I saw the title, Last Will and Testament. For a moment, I froze, because wills aren't something you just stumble across like takeout menus. I opened it without thinking, curiosity outweighing etiquette. It took 3 lines to stop my breath. Everything, every last dollar, every inch of the house, every piece of my parents' assets was going to Verlies. Not one word about me, not a single acknowledgement of the years I helped them pay that mortgage when Dad's back went out, or the groceries I delivered after Mom's surgery, or the late-night phone calls I answered, walking them through online banking. Nothing. I kept reading, thinking maybe I missed a page. There had to be a mention, some token of appreciation, but no, just a single generic sentence near the end. We leave this with equal love for both our daughters. Equal love? I felt like a damn fool. I set the will aside without reacting. Dad came back into the room a few minutes later, sipping from his mug, and asked, "Find the tax doc?" "Not yet," I said, smiling so tight it felt like my face might crack. It wasn't the moment to blow up. I needed to process this quietly first, and maybe part of me still hoped there was a reasonable explanation. A mistake. Something that would make sense when I wasn't sitting there with betrayal tangled around my ribs like barbed wire. But 2 days later, the second blow landed. My phone rang while I was reviewing a client's retirement plan at the office. It was Mom. "Hi, honey," she cooed. "Listen, we've hit a little snag this month. Would you be able to send us $1,500 just to cover the utility bills and a couple other things?" I hesitated for all of 2 seconds before saying, "Yeah, of course." I transferred the money during my lunch break. It wasn't unusual, they'd asked before and I always came through. But that night, while I was half watching a crime doc on Netflix and scrolling through Instagram, I saw Verlies' story. She was at La Mer, that overpriced spa up near Boulder. Robes, wine, massage oils, soft lighting, and the caption, "Self-care is the best care pre-holiday reset." My stomach turned. I tapped through more photos. Sushi, champagne, candles. So that's where the utility bills went. At first, I told myself I must be wrong. Coincidence, timing. But I knew better. I knew what this was. They weren't just ignoring me, they were using me. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, I sat with it. I sat with the weight of what I now understood. That I was the reliable one, the useful one, not the loved one. That night I drove home in silence. The sky was already dark by 6, and the cold was starting to bite through my coat. Inside my apartment, I poured myself a glass of wine and curled up on the couch. Across from me, on the bookshelf, was a photo of me and Verlies as kids, matching dresses, arms around each other. The glass frame had a tiny crack in the top corner. I'd meant to fix it. Now I just stared at it, and for the first time, I let myself feel it. This wasn't about money. It never was. This was about being erased. It had been 3 days since I read the will, since the spa photos, since the reality hit like a slap in the face. I hadn't said anything to anyone, not a single word to my parents, not even to Verlies. I went to work. I smiled at clients. I returned emails. I even laughed when my coworker Trina made some joke about her chaotic Thanksgiving plans. But every laugh, every smile, every nod, it was all muscle memory. Inside, I was unraveling in silence. It was a rainy Wednesday evening when my father called. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, still in my work clothes, nursing a cup of lukewarm tea I'd forgotten about. The window beside me blurred with soft droplets, and the light in my room was dim, muted, like the rest of me. "Hi, Dad," I answered, my voice more flat than I intended. He didn't ask how I was. No chit-chat. He got right to it. "About what you saw last weekend." His voice was too even, too rehearsed. "It's more complicated than you think." I didn't respond. I waited. "Your mother and we thought it was best. Verlies, she's had a harder time. You've always been strong. Independent?" There it was, the narrative, the same old script. "You're stable," he continued. "She's not. You don't need it like she does." I pressed the phone tighter against my ear. My jaw locked so hard it hurt. I closed my eyes and felt a thud behind them, the ache of restraint. "That's your justification?" I asked, voice calm, too calm. "It's not about love, Anselma. You know we love you." I almost laughed, but it would have come out wrong, too bitter, too broken. "We're done here," I said softly, and hung up. I didn't cry, I didn't throw the phone, I just sat there letting the words settle in like wet cement. Not needed. Not deserving. Not included. I'd been demoted from daughter to utility. Reliable, silent, and ultimately replaceable. Later that night, I pulled out an old shoebox from my closet. Inside were scrapbooks and birthday cards, old letters, silly notes from middle school. I flipped through the pages slowly, my fingers tracing the edges of memories that now felt artificial. One photo stood out, Verlies crying after losing a 6th grade spelling bee. I remembered that day. I'd placed second. Dad had told me to let her win, just this once. She was sensitive, and I was mature enough to understand. I had nodded. I always nodded. In high school, I got into the state honors program. At the celebration dinner, all the attention went to Verlies getting a C+ in Algebra 2. "She worked so hard," Mom gushed. No one even mentioned my name. And still, I believed I was lucky to be seen as the strong one. I wore that label like a medal, thinking it meant they respected me. Turns out it meant they felt they could take me for granted. The next evening, just as I was making dinner, my phone buzzed with a call from Claire, my cousin. She rarely called. We mostly exchanged birthday texts and heart reacts on Facebook posts. I answered with polite curiosity. "Hey," she said hesitantly. "I was just checking in. Heard things got weird at your parents' house." "Weird?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Yeah, well, my mom mentioned something about the will. I didn't want to pry, but Uncle Cadrian always used to say you were doing fine on your own. That Verlisa needed more help." I paused, spatula still in hand. "So he's been saying that for a while, huh?" Claire exhaled slowly. "Honestly? Yeah, I think they meant well, but—" There was no but that would fix it. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd deliberately chosen not to include me. They weren't confused. They weren't misguided. They agreed. I finished cooking, plated the pasta, and left it on the counter. I didn't eat. I wasn't hungry anymore. That night, I stood in front of the gallery wall in my hallway, the one with a dozen framed photos of family vacations, birthdays, holidays. I stared at the picture of my parents and me at Niagara Falls. Then I took it down. One by one, I removed every photo that had their faces in it. I didn't burn them. I didn't shred them. I just put them in a box and slid it under my bed. I wanted space. I wanted air. I wanted something that didn't echo their voices every time I looked at it. I picked up my journal. The pages smelled faintly of lavender from a sachet I tucked between them months ago. I opened to a clean page and wrote, "What do you call a family that never actually saw you?" A week passed, but nothing really changed. At least, not on the outside. I still went to work. I still replied to emails. I still smiled at the receptionist in the elevator. But I felt like a guest in my own body, like someone else had stepped into my skin and forgotten how to move around in it. It was a Sunday morning when I opened Instagram out of habit. I was sipping coffee by the window, watching the sun push through the clouds without warming anything, bright but cold, like a spotlight on something I didn't want to see. Verlies had posted a new photo. Throwback with my rock, my everything, dad goals. It was her and my father, arm in arm, both smiling in front of the lake near Estes Park. The colors had been filtered, softened, like some perfect Hallmark moment. But something felt off. It took me a second, and then I saw it. There was space behind Dad's shoulder, an awkward crop on the left side of the image. A strange floating edge of light that didn't belong. I knew that photo. I had it too. I pulled out my old backup drive and connected it to my laptop. The folder labeled Family Photos hadn't been touched in months. When I found the original file, I clicked it open. There I was, standing on the other side of Dad, smiling like I belonged. The original photo had 3 people. The one she posted had 2. They'd cut me out, not metaphorically, not emotionally, literally, cropped, removed, erased. I stared at the screen, hands frozen on the keyboard, coffee cooling beside me. For a long time, I didn't move. I just stared at the difference between truth and narrative. And then I laughed. A low, stunned laugh that didn't reach my chest. Later that day, I opened a different folder. Milestones. Graduation, promotions, birthdays. I scanned through the images, looking for patterns I'd never noticed before. And I saw them. Dozens of them. Photos where I stood just out of frame, where eyes looked past me, where conversations swirled around me like I was decoration, not blood. I remembered my college graduation, how I'd won a full ride to an Ivy League, and how at the family dinner, all anyone talked about was Verlies landing her first job interview. Not the job, the interview. "You're the strong one," Mom had said that night. "You don't need the spotlight. You shine on your own." At the time it felt like love. Now it sounded like dismissal. Like she was saying, "Don't expect anything. You already give too much." I opened a drawer and found one of the photo albums from when we were kids. Inside, a picture of the 4 of us at the Grand Canyon. Everyone smiling. But now I noticed, Dad's arm was around Verlies, not me. Mom's hand rested on her shoulder. I stood next to them, smiling just the same, but not touched, not claimed. Maybe it had always been this way. Maybe I just didn't want to see it. By late afternoon, the sun had dipped lower behind the apartment buildings, and I sat at my desk, flipping through those photos over and over, looking for something I'd missed, hoping for one image where I felt chosen. I didn't find one. Instead, I opened my email, not to send anything, just to type. Subject: when you erased me. I stared at the blinking cursor for several minutes before I started writing. I didn't know if I'd ever send it. That didn't matter. I just needed the words to exist somewhere outside my body, because now I knew they weren't just choosing her. They were rewriting a family without me in it. Wednesday came with drizzle and bone-deep cold. I wrapped my scarf tighter as I walked through the parking structure and into my office building. Our floor smelled like burnt coffee and fluorescent lights. I liked the routine here. Numbers didn't play favorites, forecasts didn't pretend, spreadsheets didn't crop you out of memories. I was halfway through reviewing a client's portfolio, 2 monitors glowing in front of me, my attention zoned in, when the internal line rang. I rarely got calls on that one. I paused, pressed the speaker button. "Anselma?" It was Lainey at reception. Her voice trembled. "Your family's here. They say it's urgent." I sat still for a beat, the word family rattling in my ribs. "Did they say why?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "They wouldn't say, but they won't leave." My hand hovered over the mouse for a moment. Then I stood. "I'll come down." As I descended in the elevator, my reflection in the mirrored walls looked calm, unbothered. But inside, my stomach curled into knots. They weren't supposed to come here. This was my space, professional, clean, untouched by the mess I'd left in my personal life. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and there they were. Dad, arms crossed, face tight with expectation. Mom in her familiar beige coat and faux sympathetic smile. And Verlies, of course. Perfect hair, perfect posture, eyes scanning the room like she was the guest of honor. They stood in a line, like some kind of intervention. I approached slowly. They turned in unison. "You can't ignore us forever," Dad said first, skipping any pretense of affection. Mom's voice was soft, like she was trying to soothe a wild animal. "Sweetheart, we just want to talk. Don't make this bigger than it is." I took a breath, steady but low. "You already made it bigger," I said, eyes locked on her. "When you decided I wasn't your daughter anymore." There was a flicker behind her eyes. Discomfort? Guilt? Hard to say. She adjusted her scarf and looked at Dad, who didn't flinch. "You're being dramatic," Verlies finally chimed in. "It's just a will. You act like it's some kind of betrayal." I laughed, sharp, humorless. "You don't get to rewrite the narrative just because you're comfortable in it." "I didn't ask for anything," she muttered. "No," I replied. "You just took it when it was offered." I turned and walked away, not giving them the drama they came for. Back at my desk, I closed the blinds, sat down, and tried to pretend it was just another afternoon. I managed maybe 10 minutes of focus before the alert pinged on my phone. "Your account ending in **38 has been debited $2,500. My breath caught. I opened the banking app, heart racing. The transaction came from the joint account I had set up for Mom years ago, back when she struggled to manage her medical bills. I'd forgotten it even existed. I scrolled. It was a wire transfer to an upscale event venue. I called the bank immediately. The customer service rep was kind, but the response was clinical. "Unfortunately, since she's a legal co-holder, the transaction is authorized." I hung up slowly, my hands cold despite the heat in the room. That money wasn't just stolen, it was assumed. Taken like it still belonged to them. They'd shown up in my workplace, demanded a conversation, and then, behind my back, reached into my pocket. I opened the group chat we hadn't used in half a year. Their names stared back at me in the top bar: Kadrian, Sorrel, Verlies. I typed slowly, deliberately. "This is the last time you take anything from me without my consent," and I hit send. 2 days later, I was in the kitchen making tea when my phone rang. Unknown number, local area code, but not familiar. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was spam, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Is this Anselma Elmore?" "Yes, speaking." "This is Samantha from Equifax Fraud and Identity Services. We're calling to verify a recent co-signature on a personal line of credit, $12,000, issued last week under your name." The words barely registered at first. Then they hit. "I didn't co-sign anything," I said. A brief pause, followed by quiet typing on the other end. "The application listed your full name and an older residential address. The secondary signer is Sorrel Elmore." My grip tightened on the counter. Steam rose steadily from the kettle behind me. "That's my mother." "I see," she replied, her tone shifting. "So you're not authorizing this transaction?" "No, absolutely not. That's identity fraud." "We'll open an investigation and email you the formal dispute documents," she said. "But please note, because the signer is a known relative and may have had access to previous records, this could be a lengthy process." "Understood," I muttered, already feeling the ground tilt beneath me. I ended the call and just sat down, staring at nothing. 5 full minutes passed before I could even move. The betrayal didn't just sting, it stunned. She hadn't just stepped over a line, she'd crushed it. No text this time, no carefully worded message. I called her. My hands were shaking slightly as the phone rang. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Her voice was soft, light, like she'd been waiting for me. "Sweetheart," she said, like nothing had happened. "I thought you might call." "You used my name to apply for a loan," I said evenly. "You didn't just cross a line. You buried it." She sighed, but didn't deny it. "We needed it. Things are tight right now, and you wouldn't have said yes." "No, I wouldn't have," I snapped, "because it's my name, my credit, my identity. You forged it." "It's not forgery, it's family. Families help each other." "No, families ask, families respect, they don't steal." And I hung up. I didn't yell, didn't cry. I just sat there alone in my kitchen, letting the silence harden around me. If I'd had any illusions left, they ended there. An hour later, my phone lit up again. A text from Verlies. "You're seriously doing all this over a will? Grow up." Then a group message from Mom. "We've done so much for you. This is how you repay us?" No message from Dad, just a reaction on her text. Of course, no guilt, no shame, just deflection. They weren't hiding anymore. They saw themselves as victims. I was the villain for pushing back, for setting limits, for finally saying no. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened Facebook. My page had been quiet for years. Some old work photos, the occasional birthday post, a few likes here and there. But that night, I wrote something real. No accusations, no drama, just facts. For years, I gave to my family. I paid for things, kept quiet, and told myself it was love. I ignored the imbalance. I convinced myself that loyalty meant silence. Recently, I found out I was removed from the family will, without discussion or explanation, just gone. Then I discovered a loan taken out in my name, without my permission, co-signed by someone I trusted. I've stayed quiet long enough. They haven't. So here's where I stand. I wasn't just written out of the will, I was written out of the family long before. And I hit post. No name-calling, no revenge, just truth. I didn't check for likes, didn't scroll to see who saw it. That wasn't the point. The point was, I had spoken. Let the truth breathe. Let it live where silence used to be. I was at work early that day. The coffee was burnt, my eyes were heavy, and for once my mind was quiet. Not peaceful, just suspended. I hadn't posted anything since the Facebook fallout. No response from Dad. Verlisa vanished. But the silence didn't feel like a break. It felt like pressure, like something was winding up behind the scenes. Around midday, an email popped into my inbox. Reception. You have a letter, hand-delivered, from the law offices of Henry and Clark, signed and sealed. I froze. My chest tightened. I left my desk and headed downstairs. Lainey handed me the envelope with a cautious look, the kind you give someone when you know it's bad but can't say so out loud. The letterhead told me everything. Back at my desk, I sat down, stared at the thick envelope for a second, then opened it. 3 pages. Heavy, glossy paper. The tone was cold, precise. You are being formally warned against sharing private family information with malicious intent on public platforms. The client? Sorrel Elmore, my mother. I read that line again. She hadn't called, hadn't written. No apology, no explanation, just lawyers. Threats, paper over pain. She wasn't trying to speak to me. She wanted to silence me. They weren't negotiating. They were drawing a line. I read the entire thing, slowly, twice. I didn't flinch. I just pulled out the office scanner, fed in the pages, and saved the files in a folder labeled Defense. No reply, no panic, just evidence. That night, I sat by the window with a glass of water. Snow was falling hard now, dancing under the orange glow of the street lamps. The city felt distant, wrapped in hush. I was drained, but sharp. The fog was gone. Then my phone lit up. A message from Nina, an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in months. Hey, did you actually say those things about your mom on that call? My stomach dropped. What call? I texted back. She replied with an audio file. I hesitated, then hit play. My voice, but wrong, off. Clipped sentences, choppy edits. The rhythm was weird, the tone mismatched. A manipulative liar who doesn't deserve the title of mother. I never said that, ever. The call was a Frankenstein version of something real. Our last conversation. Chopped up and rearranged. It was me, but not me. Someone had stitched together a character assassination. I messaged her back immediately. That's fake, badly edited. I have the full call saved, start to finish. Nina didn't answer right away. I could picture her staring at her phone, caught between what she heard and what she knew. That's what they were counting on. Doubt. Confusion. They didn't need to prove I was a liar. Just enough to make me look unstable. I pulled up the files. Audio backups of everything. The full call with Mom. The one with Verlise. I had them all. Documented, date-stamped, saved for reasons just like this. In the quiet, I opened a new doc and started writing a timeline. From the will, to the account transfers, to the gaslighting, to this. Every twist, every threat, every trap. I added receipts, screenshots, dates. I opened folders, labeled everything, cross-referenced timestamps, built the scaffolding of a truth they didn't want seen. Outside, the snow had coated the fire escape, thick and undisturbed. They thought sending lawyers would scare me. They thought splicing my voice would break me. They were wrong. I wasn't going to panic. I wasn't going to yell into the void. I was going to build a case. They called me dangerous for telling the truth. Wait until they saw what I could do with proof. My apartment windows were fogged from the inside, blurred by the condensation that came from days of refusing to open them. The radiator hummed, but the chill had settled beneath my skin and into the soft tissue of my patience. It was the kind of cold that didn't just touch you, it stayed. I was stirring oatmeal mindlessly when I saw the notification pop up on my phone. A neighbor I barely knew had sent a screenshot. No caption, just the image. Fort Collins Family Circle public post. When a daughter turns on her own mother for a few dollars, shameful. My stomach didn't drop, it locked. The first comment? Mrs. Kenna, one of Mom's longtime church friends. She'd braided my hair for a bake sale when I was 9. I raised 3 girls. None of them would ever disrespect me like that. Prayers to Sorrel. And then, the one that should have surprised me, but still felt like a slap. Verlice. No matter what, I'll always choose love over greed. I froze mid-bite. The oatmeal turned cold in my bowl. It wasn't just the words that hit, it was what came after, or rather, what didn't. The people who had quietly liked my Facebook post 2 weeks ago, the ones who'd messaged me in private, who said they understood, none of them showed up now. Not one public defense, not one counter-comment. Their silence buzzed louder than any insult. By afternoon, the group chat with the family had once again lit up. This time, it wasn't passive-aggressive. It was direct. From Dad, "If you really loved us, you'd stop airing our business. You're not being a daughter, you're being a problem." A problem. Like I was mold on a wall, a leak under the sink, an inconvenience to be patched over and repainted. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I let out a laugh, dry, hollow, as if it came from somewhere else in the room and not my own body. And then I reached for my journal, the one I hadn't touched in 3 days, and wrote the clearest line I'd ever penned. I wasn't being a daughter, I was being a donor, not family, just function. That evening, as I was organizing receipts, Claire called. Her voice was hushed, like she wasn't supposed to be making the call, like the truth itself needed to be whispered. "And Selma, I need to tell you something. I should have said it earlier." I sat on the edge of my bed, the phone pressed to my ear like it might burn. "Your mom knew about the will, from the beginning. She told the family it was for the best, that you wouldn't understand." The room fell quiet. Even my heartbeat seemed to step aside. "She told everyone not to bring it up with you, said it would only cause trouble." I didn't ask for proof. I didn't doubt her. I didn't need to. Because I'd always suspected that Mom stood in the hallway between betrayal and protection, that she might have been manipulated. But this? She wasn't caught in the crossfire. She was holding the rifle. I thanked Claire. I don't remember the tone of my voice, but I do remember hanging up and sitting there, still, my hands folded in my lap like I was waiting for something, judgment perhaps, or maybe the sudden weightlessness that comes when a foundation completely collapses. But no such freedom arrived. Later that week, on my way home from work, I stopped by the Safeway to pick up a few things. The air outside was sharp with wind, snowflakes dancing sideways under the parking lot lights. That's when I saw her, Verlice, standing next to the flower stand, holding her phone like it was an award. She glanced up, saw me, and smirked. "So," she said, brushing snow from her shoulder, "how's your little pity parade going?" There was no audience here, no church members, no family friends. Just her, just me. She waited for me to snap, to defend, to make a scene. But I didn't. I stepped closer, met her eyes, and said calmly, "You may have their will, but I have their truth, and I'm about to make it public." Her smirk wavered, just a twitch, but enough for me. I walked inside without another glance. She didn't follow. I picked up a carton of milk, paid in cash, and stepped back into the cold. The wind stung my cheeks, but I didn't flinch. They had tried to bury me. But they'd forgotten something important. I'd grown roots in concrete. 2 mornings after seeing Verlice outside Safeway, I woke up before sunrise. The sky outside my bedroom window was a soft, indifferent gray. Still, the cold felt different that day. Less numbing, more clarifying, like something in the air had shifted. Or maybe it was just me. At 7:12 a.m., while sipping from my chipped ceramic mug, the one I kept out of stubbornness, I saw the email notification on my phone. Subject: about the Elmore estate. It was from Thorne, not some anonymous attorney. Thorne had been with our family for years. He knew our birthdays, our messes, our milestones. He'd drafted the first version of my dad's will. Now he was writing to me, not as a family friend, but as a lawyer with concerns. Anselma, the message read, I have reason to believe the second version of your father's will contains significant discrepancies. Please review the attached documents at your earliest convenience. We need to speak. I opened the file, side-by-side scans. One dated a few months before Dad's health went downhill. My name clearly listed. A third split marked for a local animal shelter. Verlies still got the bulk, but I was there. Then the second document, recent, abrupt, and cold. Verlies's name stood alone. I didn't need to squint to catch the differences. The signature flowed differently. The ink was newer. The notarization stamp lacked its usual county watermark. And the date? It was the same weekend Dad was hospitalized with pneumonia and hallucinating. He couldn't even hold a spoon then, let alone a pen. I stared at the screen, then hit forward to my own attorney. No emotion, just action. Later that afternoon, I met Thorne at his office. A modest building downtown, all warm wood and old brass. He offered coffee. I declined. I can't officially advise you unless retained, he said. But off the record, this smells like coercion, or at the very least, a misrepresentation. Also, assigning full estate rights to one party without the spouse's co-signature violates Colorado joint property statutes. I folded my hands in my lap. So what happens next? He hesitated. An inquiry has already been opened. Someone sent documents anonymously to the State Legal Review Board. I assume it wasn't you. I didn't answer, because it didn't matter who'd opened the door. The truth has a way of walking in, uninvited, once there's a crack. That night, I lit one candle and sat at my desk. I didn't write a long post. No hashtags, no callouts, no fire, just a sentence. When they tried to erase me from paper, I wrote myself back in ink. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't enable comments. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. A message from Verlies. This is getting out of hand. Take it down. You're humiliating us. I read it once, then again, and then I placed the phone screen down on the table and kept the candle lit. I didn't feel the urge to reply. For the first time, their discomfort wasn't my responsibility. Their silence wasn't suffocating me. It was shielding them from the weight of everything I finally had the power to say. Because here's the thing no one tells you, silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's the final word. Closure isn't always a door slammed. Sometimes it's just you walking away. 3 weeks passed. The snow that once muffled the sidewalks had receded into slush, and even that had dried now, leaving behind faint salt stains on the curbs. The mornings no longer bit at my fingers. Instead, they brushed past them, offering something softer, like the world was thawing alongside me. I hadn't followed the court proceedings, not in real time, not with popcorn or commentary. I didn't need to sit through transcripts or refresh court dockets. I got a summary from Thorne, concise, professional, devoid of sentiment. Kadrian Elmore has been summoned for further inquiry regarding estate irregularities. Sorrel Elmore declined to offer a statement. No apology, no confession, no grand unraveling, just silence, which, oddly enough, felt louder than words. There's a kind of peace that comes when the noise finally dies down, even if it's just from people giving up the act. That morning, instead of diving into social feeds or the endless scroll of takes and hashtags, I grabbed my coat and walked 2 blocks to a small corner cafe I hadn't stepped into in years. The bell above the door still jingled like a memory. The owner, Marta, still wore her hair in that loose silver bun. She blinked, then lit up. "Anselma?" she said. "Where have you been hiding, girl?" I smiled. "Busy rediscovering air." She chuckled and poured me a black coffee without asking. "It's on the house," she said. "You always tip too much." I took my mug to a seat by the window and watched people drift by. Bundled couples, grocery bags, toddlers in puffer jackets. Life didn't wait for the dust to settle. It just kept moving. Maybe I could too. I opened my laptop, not to work, not to scroll, but to write. For the first time in a long time, I logged into my old blog, a relic from college days when I still believed my words might echo somewhere. I titled the post, "Some Truths Don't Need an Audience, Just Air to Breathe." And I wrote. I wrote about grief that doesn't come from death, about losing people who still breathe the same air but feel galaxies away, about how silence from the people you love can feel worse than shouting from strangers. I didn't name them, didn't point fingers or rehash old wounds. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about breath. My own. How I learned to exhale without waiting for someone else's approval. That afternoon, back at the office, I was organizing files when the front desk buzzed. "There's someone here to see you," my assistant said. "She didn't have an appointment." It was Mrs. Delaney. I hadn't seen her in years. Wrinkles had deepened around her eyes, but her posture was upright, determined. "You probably don't remember me," she said, her voice kind but weathered. "You helped me save my home. I never forgot." I did remember. A mess of paperwork, a last-minute refinance, a handwritten thank you card. But I hadn't expected her to walk in years later just to say this. "Thank you," she said again, "for being steady, for not letting me give up." She left after 10 minutes. Nothing dramatic. But when the door shut behind her, I felt something unfamiliar flood my chest. Not pride, not validation, just peace. That night, I got home to find a small cream envelope in my mailbox. No return address. My name was written in soft blue ink, careful cursive. Inside, one line. "You didn't deserve any of it. I'm sorry. Claire." No explanation, no defense, just those words. I didn't text her, didn't forward it to anyone. I folded the note and slid it into the back of my journal. Not to forgive, not to forget, just to witness it. Because sometimes acknowledgement matters more than apology. Later, I lit a candle and turned off every device I owned. No background noise, no screen glare, just me. I opened my journal and wrote one final entry. "I am not the forgotten daughter. I am the one who remembered myself." I closed the book slowly. The apartment was still. But for the first time, it wasn't empty. Because I wasn't either. I stood by the window, watching the city breathe in quiet pulses of light. My reflection stared back. Tired, but whole. I wasn't waiting for anyone to show up for me anymore. I had. And that was enough. When your family tries to define your worth by how much you give, how quiet you stay, or how little you ask for, walk away with your dignity intact. The silence you once thought was strength might have just been fear dressed as loyalty. And when you finally speak, when you finally reclaim your voice, they won't know what to do with the sound. I didn't get justice in the way I first imagined. There was no dramatic apology, no overnight healing. But I got something better. Clarity, freedom, and self-respect. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. Peace doesn't always arrive with closure. It often comes from choosing yourself even when no one else does. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or made to feel like your existence was inconvenient, know this. You're not alone and you're not invisible. Not here. Not in this space. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been pushed aside by the people you trusted most? Did you stay silent or did you finally speak up? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story touched you, drop a 1 in the chat or tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. And if this video didn't resonate, I'd still love to hear why. What would you have done differently? What does healing look like to you? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you want more real stories that don't sugarcoat family, identity, or healing. Your voice matters here, and so does your experience. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, remember, they can try to erase you, but they can't erase your truth. And one day, that truth will speak louder than their silence ever did.
You made a horrendous mistake. You're fired. Don't ever come back to this company. Yelling that, the manager stormed out of the room. So, I'm getting fired. Huh. I've been contributing to the company without any major errors, but it seems I need to start job hunting. But on the second day after being fired, my cell phone suddenly rang. Oh, good, you answered. David, can you come back to the office right now? Having been told this, I hurry to the company. My name is David. I live with my loving wife and our energetic 8-year-old son. I work for a subsidiary of a major food manufacturer, handling the ordering and receipt of food products. I deal with products for both restaurants and retail consumers, so managing the inventory is quite challenging. It's a job where attention to detail is crucial, but I've always managed to do it smoothly without any major mistakes. However, there was one troublemaker at the office. Hey David, this document was supposed to be finished by today, right? The one shouting at me was Paul, the manager. Paul is younger than me, in his 40s, but he's my boss because he is the son of the director of the main food manufacturing company. He always gives orders with a pompous attitude. Furthermore, he always believes he's right and is surprisingly bad at his job. He became a director just 2 weeks ago, and for some reason, he seems to have taken a disliking to me. He checks on me daily, pushing more and more work onto my plate. After you finish that, get this document done as well. Hurry it up. Yes, I understand. You should take the initiative before your boss tells you. Honestly, you're so thoughtless. The manager threw a bundle of papers onto my desk and left the room. As I was picking up the scattered documents, I could hear my colleagues whispering to each other. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but being in the same room, I couldn't help but overhear. Paul is always tough on David, isn't he? David does his job so meticulously and without any mistakes. I'd wonder why. But David can be a bit absent-minded, you know. He doesn't hold any significant position at his age, right? Maybe he's not interested in climbing the corporate ladder. Well, with that kind of attitude, promotion seems tough for him. Even when the younger manager scolds him, he just brushes it off with a smile. As I overheard my colleagues chuckling behind my back, I let out a sigh. Let them talk. I'm just doing my job my way. Doing what I need to do my way, I continued to tackle the tasks assigned to me by the manager. However, one day while I was working as usual, a colleague suddenly began to panic. Answering the phone, he was sweating profusely and kept repeating apologies. Wondering what had happened, the colleague hung up the phone and approached me. David, what's the meaning of this? Huh. Me? The colleague handed me a note. The content was a complaint from a major client. We ordered 50 units of the regular business product and 500 household items to hand out as samples, but they received only the 50 units of the business product. They were furious, saying they were supposed to distribute the household items at an event in 3 days. How will we make this right? You're kidding. That can't be. I've never made such a mistake before, and I was sure I checked this order too. Why did this happen? I started to panic. I handled orders for 2 types of products: business and household. The large packs for business and the individually packaged household items have the same product name, so they're easy to mix up. Because it's an area prone to errors, I always double-checked, especially since it would be difficult to correct such a mistake. But the fact remains that we got this complaint. Quickly composing myself, I opened my computer to verify the order. The purchase order showed a record of 50 business products. That's strange. I'm sure I ordered the 500 household items as well. Unable to believe my eyes, I felt a sudden chill. Then the next moment, Paul's loud voice echoed throughout the room. What kind of mistake is this, you useless employee? No, I'm sure I ordered the 500 household items too. Enough. You clearly only ordered the business products. If you have time to make excuses, find a way to gather those 500 household items now. Paul pushed me against my desk in anger and stormed out of the room. My colleagues looked on with concern at the altercation between the manager and me, but none offered help. Either way, I have to find those household items. I quickly returned to my desk and started calling our branches. I'm sorry for the sudden request. If you have any spare household items, could you send them over, please? I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I owe you one. Only 240 left, and only 3 days left until the event where our client will participate. Can I really gather all 500 by then? No time to doubt. I need to do whatever I can right now. I frantically made calls to address the situation. I deeply apologize. Yes, thank you for checking. I kept bowing and asking if they had any stock. Even if there was just one item available, I would drive there myself to pick it up. Only 70 left. Then, the day before the event, holding boxes filled with the products, I bowed deeply. Thank you so much for this. I can't thank you enough. Finally, I had managed to secure the 500th item. In the end, I managed to prepare the required amount for the event where our client was participating. After that, I quickly headed to the client's place to deliver the goods, but the person in charge looked down on me with a gaze filled with anger. What's going on? We've been doing business for a long time, but I've never felt like this before. Sorry, but I can't trust you anymore. Our business relationship is over. The client angrily took the goods and with a slam, shut the door right in front of me. I stood there, head bowed in disappointment, for a while before slowly making my way back to the office. I did everything I could. When I got back, there stood the manager with a stern look, arms crossed, waiting for me. You really messed up this time. If this keeps up, you're going to ruin the company's reputation. You're fired. Leave now and don't come back. With that, the manager stormed out of the room. I trudged back to my desk, dejected. Is this how I get fired? My mistake caused the company so much trouble. I had always been a reliable employee and contributed well, but it seems I'll have to start job hunting. It'll be tough at my age since I hadn't climbed a corporate ladder. How will I break the news to my wife and son when I get home? With a heavy heart, I started packing up my things as the end of the day approached. I apologized to my colleagues. I'm really sorry for the trouble I've caused. Thank you for everything. I'll be on my way now. I went around apologizing to everyone and then clocked out after finishing the formalities to use my remaining paid time off. I realized there was nothing left for me to do at the company. It's been a long 3 days. I could hear the creaking as I stretched my neck and shoulders. What will I tell my wife and son when I get home? Would they be disappointed in me? Would they see me as a failure? No, they'll greet me with their usual smiles. Given their nature, they wouldn't blame me, but that thought somehow felt even harder to bear. Lost in thought, I found myself close to home. I'm home. Welcome back, Dad. You're late. Oh, you look a bit off. Something happened. Holding my energetic son in my arms, I smiled and shook my head in response to my wife's question. Just a little something. I'll talk about it later. All right then. Let's eat once you've changed. I headed to my bedroom at a slow pace. Both my wife and son greeted me with warm smiles, just as I had imagined. That made me even more unsure about how to break the news to them. Anyways, I'll tell them after dinner. With renewed determination, I went back to the living room where my wife and son were waiting. Let's eat. Let's eat. So, what happened? You seem a bit down, Dad. Something wrong. Their voices, full of concern for me, made my heart race. But I couldn't keep this from them forever. Taking a deep breath and gathering my courage, I began to speak. I'm really sorry, you two. It looks like I've been laid off from work. Upon hearing my words, my wife's eyes widened in shock, rendering her speechless. Instead, it was my son who raised his voice. That's awesome, Dad. You don't have to go to work now, right? Yeah. I'll be home for a while starting tomorrow. Jay, let's go to the amusement park then. I've been wanting to go. My son is beaming, gazing at me with a big smile. I just stared back at my son, not expecting his reaction like this. Then my wife began to chuckle softly. Oh, that's a great idea. You seemed quite swamped lately. It'd be nice for you to relax. I'd be happy if you were home more. I was taken aback by my wife and son's response, but at the same time, I felt a great sense of relief. I see neither of them blames me for getting laid off. I guess it's all right for me to just take it easy at home. Come to think of it, since my son grew up, we haven't really gone on any long trips. I had left all the parenting and household chores to my wife, so maybe this was a good opportunity to spend time with the family. Deep in thought, cherishing the moment, I smiled at the two of them. How about this weekend when there's no school? Let's all go to the amusement park. Yay, you promised, Dad. I'm looking forward to it already. Their joyful voices filled the living room. What a warm family gathering this is. I'm truly blessed to have these happy moments. Feeling a bit relieved, I continued with my meal. However, the very next morning, after I took my paid leave, my cell phone suddenly rang. The caller was a colleague from work. I wonder what's up. Did I make another mistake? With a hint of anxiety, I answered the call. Hello, this is David. Oh, David. Glad you picked up. I'm sorry to bother you during your vacation, but can you come to the office right away? Did something happen? I'm sorry, please come back as soon as possible. I can't explain in detail over the phone, but it's urgent. Understood. I'll be right there. Hearing the urgency in my colleague's voice, I quickly got dressed. My wife looked at me with a puzzled expression. Is everything okay? Was that the office? Yeah, they need me. I'm heading out. I arrived at the office about 40 minutes after the call. As I approached my department, the same colleague hurriedly came over. David, thank goodness you are here. Please come with me quickly. Following my hurried colleague, I couldn't help but tilt my head in confusion. Why the rush? What could have possibly happened? As we ran, he started explaining the situation to me. According to him, the morning after I was fired, an infuriated COO stormed into our department. Why isn't he here? Explain this. Oh, are you talking about David? We're okay without that guy. Paul, who was there, tried to calm the COO, but that seemed to make him even angrier. What are you talking about? Just bring David back now. That's when they decided to contact me. Hearing my colleague's story, I was still puzzled. But I was fired, right? My colleague looked just as baffled. Leading me further, we soon came upon the CEO and a visibly upset manager. Hey, David, good to have you back. I was under the impression I was fired. Hearing the word fired, the CEO opened his mouth in surprise, but soon broke out into a hearty laugh. We'd never let you go. Without you, who's going to manage transactions for the company? With that, the CEO showed me his computer screen. There, I saw the order page for our products. Spotting a red warning icon on the screen, I couldn't help but raise my voice. Hey, something's off here. It looks like no orders have been placed since the day after I got fired and went on unpaid leave. Well, that's because you weren't here. Huh. Why would orders stop just because I'm not around? Because, David, it's a job that only you can handle. The CEO then handed a note to Paul, who sat silently. Paul, can you place the order from this note? Sure. Upon receiving the note, Paul moved to the computer. However, as he was about to place it, he stopped, looking utterly confused. Excuse me, what's written here? I need this in English to place the order. Hearing Paul's words, the CEO burst into hearty laughter. After a short while, he regained his composure and looked straight at me. All right, David, can you handle the order from that note? Wait, what? No way. If I couldn't do it, there's no way David could. Just get up and hand that note to David. Following the CEO's command, Paul, looking a tad grumpy, passed the note to me, pushing it into my hand with a look that said, like you can't do any better. I took the note, sat at the computer as instructed, and checked the order details. Then I began placing it as usual. This is a food product from Singapore. I'm placing the order now. Is that English? The words look all jumbled. The next item is from Australia. Oh, what's this product called? I can't read this at all. Paul kept interrupting, but I steadily continued with the order. Once I entered all the items from the note, I turned to the co. If there's anything else, I'll order it right away. We have our regular order with South Africa coming up soon. Right. That's right. Hey, if there are any order requests, bring them over. David's back, and he can handle it right away. Upon hearing the CEO's words, several employees immediately rushed over. David, could you please handle this? I need this done too, and urgently. As I busily input the orders from the forms being handed to me, I overheard Paul mumbling complaints from afar. I can't believe it. How can David, of all people, place these orders? That's when it hit me. It seems Paul didn't know I was proficient in English dialects. In fact, during my college years, I had researched various English dialects and had almost aced the test. I had especially studied English influenced by local languages in places like Singapore and South Africa, which allowed me to understand order forms without constantly looking up local terms. Being able to read and write all communications with vendors from those countries had been quite beneficial in transactions. Once I had finished inputting all the requested orders, I double-checked the product names and quantities. All right, everything seems correct and sent. I felt relieved to have successfully placed the orders, but then I noticed something odd. Huh. What's this? This computer was exclusively for orders and displayed order history and the last update history once an order was finalized. Moreover, an employee was required to operate this computer, so the name of the employee who was using it at the time was also recorded. Upon checking the records, the last update was still on the day I was told I'd be fired. However, the last person to update it was listed as Paul. I see. That's what happened. What's going on, David? Everything became clear, and I stood up abruptly. The order mistake the other day wasn't my fault. Isn't that right, Paul? What are you on about now? It was your mistake, and that's why you were fired, wasn't it? Confronted by my accusation, Paul, with a red face, retorted. He fervently pointed to the computer screen I had been working on. You were the expert at ordering, weren't you? Plus, you just said that you're the only one who can understand that gibberish English, right? You really won't admit it, will you? Then let me show you the evidence. With that, I promptly printed out the screen. I showed the printed paper to everyone present. Take a look here. It says Paul under the last updated column, doesn't it? No, that's... Paul stammered, flailing his hands, but everyone's gaze was fixed on the paper I held. The CEO took the paper from me, staring at Paul's name intently. After a moment, he said in a grave tone, "It seems it's time. Time for you to leave this company, Paul." "No, this must be some mistake," Paul began, pale-faced, trying to explain himself. But the CEO, with a stern look, declared, "I'll be informing your father about this. Expect appropriate consequences. Brace yourself." The CEO fixed his gaze on Paul and then left the room. Suddenly, Paul let out a short cry and collapsed weakly to the floor. Meanwhile, I was surrounded by my colleagues, all addressing me at once. "David, I had no idea you had such skills. To be honest, I thought you were incompetent. I'm truly sorry. We didn't talk much, and I thought you were a bit odd. I apologize." "Hey, it's not like you guys did anything wrong, so no need to apologize. Besides, it looks like I still have a job here, so let's continue to get along," I said, trying to reassure my colleagues. Seeing their relieved expressions, I felt my own tension ease. And so, having proven I hadn't made any mistakes, I safely returned home. When I told my wife and son that I'd be returning to work, they were genuinely overjoyed. A few days later, while I was on unpaid leave, my cell phone rang again. It was the CEO. "Sorry to bother you during your time off. The thing is, I got a call from a client. He insisted that he needed to speak with you directly." "That's okay. What happened after the order mishap?" "The client wanted to know if it truly was your mistake. They remembered how dedicated and passionate you have been in our dealings with them, and thought there might have been some misunderstanding." "Oh, I see." I was brought back to the memories of that time. It feels good to know that our long-standing client had such trust in me. The CEO continued speaking. "I always believed you couldn't have made that mistake, but to think that Paul tampered with it. I'm truly sorry for this. After that incident, we had a meeting with the high-ups, and as a result, he was let go. He deserved it after what he did. Paul's father is a top executive at our parent company, but it seems his actions were still inexcusable. From what the CEO said, Paul is currently looking for jobs at other companies, but rumors of his tampering are making it tough for him." After hanging up, I took a deep breath. Now I can get back to work as usual. With Paul gone, I'm even more motivated. Seeing my renewed energy, my wife said, "Seems like some good news," and chuckled. The next day, as we had promised, we took a family trip to the amusement park. My wife and I enjoyed the park, watching our son looking happy. "Dad, Mom, we can get a fast pass here." "Oh, they have that handy option." Our son explained that it was a system where we could use the attractions on a priority basis within a designated time. Seeing how much our son has grown without us realizing makes me feel warm inside. And so, we enjoyed the amusement park the entire day. Soon, the day to return to work arrived. I'm off. I left the house earlier than usual. The familiar commute route looked brighter to my eyes. Upon arriving at the office, I brushed off the dust from my suit and slowly entered the building. "Good morning." "Oh, good morning, David. I hate to bother you right as you get in, but could you handle this for me?" In his colleague's hand was an order form for Singapore. "Just leave it to me." And just like that, my daily routine began to get back on track. A girlfriend who accepts me as who I am. I've come to love her even more. I strongly promised myself to make her happy no matter what. My name's Jake, 28 years old, born to kind-hearted parents. I had an average school life, and now I'm a regular office worker. The company I work for has wonderful working conditions. They pay for overtime work, give regular breaks, and have solid benefits. You might think I have no worries, but even I have some issues. It's about my body shape. I have a naturally large frame, overweight. Well, actually, I'm also tall and have a big build, so I'm more like a cuddly bear. Being big isn't a problem. The issue is the gap between my appearance and my personality. Embarrassingly, I'm timid. I get scared easily and can be jumpy. Absolutely no horror movies or roller coasters for me. And while people think I must love meat and eat a lot, beef doesn't sit well with me. I like rice just as much as the average guy. Sweets like cake and chocolate are my favorite. I can't even drink black coffee. In our modern day, people say we all have different values, but people judge based on appearance anyway. My ex once dumped me, saying she thought I'd be more manly. That was back in college. I was never good with women, and being dumped like that left a huge scar. I ended up growing distant from women. As a result, I'm still single at 28. I've been set up on dates by coworkers and friends quite a few times, but conversations never really took off and nothing progressed. I hadn't found a woman I truly felt connected with since college, so I thought I was okay with that. But now, there's a woman I've been interested in at my workplace. I was assigned to a newly established department 6 months ago. The department, made up of relatively younger folks within the company, was still small and had yet to make any achievements. But everyone is full of enthusiasm to make results and expand this new department, and I feel very fulfilled doing my part. The woman I have a crush on is Jessica, who became the boss in this new department. Despite being 34, she was given a significant role in this new setup. A real successful, career-driven woman. Not only is she competent at her job, but she's also gorgeous with an outstanding figure. She's even been featured in the company newsletter, making her a bit of a celebrity around the office. But what makes her truly wonderful isn't her looks or skills, but her social and friendly personality. In a department dominated by men, Jessica always communicates proactively, which is improving the office teamwork. For some reason, she seems to pay special attention to me. "Jake, I've got a snack for you again today. Here you go." She always gives me snacks. I often get invited to lunch too. Strangely, Jessica seems to only invite me to lunch. Hey, are you by any chance dating Jessica? I've been asked this by my colleagues more times than I can count. Once I asked her, "Why do you always invite me for lunch? I'm not the best at making conversation, and wouldn't you have more fun with others?" "Oh, are you feeling pressured? It's hard to decline an invite from a boss, right?" "I'm so sorry," she quickly said. I hastily denied, "No, that's not it. I mean, I'm grateful. But I always wonder why you care about someone like me. I'm not particularly skilled at work, and there are great-looking seniors and peers around, so I wonder why you always reach out to me." Hearing my lack of confidence, Jessica softly smiled and replied, "It's not just about who gets the best results at work. We're a team, Jake. You're always there supporting everyone. That's why I and everyone else feel comfortable working with you. I know other good things about you. Be confident." Honestly, hearing that from someone I had feelings for made me incredibly happy. But I didn't have any intentions of confessing my feelings to Jessica. To me, she seemed like someone who was out of my league. Maybe she cares about me because the needy ones are the cutest or something like that. Just being around her, seeing her, and talking to her was enough to satisfy me. That's what I thought. However, soon there was an event that changed my perspective. One time, I had to go on a business trip out of state with Jessica. The overnight trip, which we were taking by train, was initially planned for Jessica and another senior colleague. But the day before, that colleague fell sick. There was talk of Jessica going alone, but last minute, they decided to let me accompany her for experience. Being my first business trip in the new department, and especially with Jessica, I was pretty nervous. Perhaps noticing my anxiety, Jessica tried to ease my tension by striking up a conversation on the train, and even gave me some time to relax when I looked tired. I was reminded again how considerate and kind she is that day. I planned to stay in a hotel, while Jessica was planning to stay at her parents' house. It turns out the business location was near Jessica's hometown, so she had taken off from work the next day. By the way, anticipating the fatigue from the trip, I had also been granted leave for the following day. Our plan was to head back leisurely on an afternoon train. However, after finishing our work, something unexpected happened. While walking close to my hotel, Jessica suddenly sat down. Apparently, she suffers from anemia sometimes. As she sat, she looked pale and said she felt dizzy. I thought of taking her to a hospital, but after she took her meds, Jessica assured me, "I'll be okay soon," and insisted we didn't need to go. "I'll take a taxi to my parents' house from here, Jake. You can head back to the hotel." "It's okay," she said, but I was too worried to let her go alone. I got into the taxi with her, deciding to drop her off at her parents' house. I was supposed to head back right after that, or at least that was the plan. But the moment we arrived at Jessica's parents' house, everything changed. I held Jessica's bags and supported her as we stood at the front door of her family's home. When I rang the doorbell of the two-story American-style house, two younger men who looked strikingly similar to each other came out. Both of them shouted in unison, "Mom, Jessica brought a guy home." Before I could even react, I heard the hustle and bustle from inside, and several people, both men and women, rushed out. "Oh my, Jessica, when did you get a boyfriend? Why didn't you tell us? We're not prepared at all. Sister-in-law's boyfriend is a big guy." While I was in shock, Jessica, having a headache, whispered, "No, he's not." She tried to explain, but then 3 kids, Jack, Leo, and Sam, came running to the door. "Auntie, you're so late. Let's play. Come on, draw something for us." Clearly, the kids weren't interested in our story. Feeling overwhelmed by everyone talking at once, an older man about my size came from the back and let out a sigh. "Everyone, please calm down. At least let them in." With this atmosphere, I couldn't say, "I'll just head out now." So I was warmly welcomed and ended up stepping inside Jessica's family home. Feeling unwell, Jessica decided to rest upstairs, and I was invited into their huge living room. That was where I was introduced to everyone, and boy, that introduction was just something else. Living in Jessica's family home were her father named Tyler, her mother Chelsea, Jessica's twin younger brothers, a younger sister named Mason, grandparents, and even a great-grandmother. Adding to that, because Jessica had returned home after a long time, her older brother Kevin and his wife Lena, their 3 kids, and a close family friend who seemed to be the boyfriend of another sister had also come over for dinner. So on this day, there was a total of 14 people at Jessica's house. Growing up as an only child, I was used to a quiet household. Well, this was also because both my parents and I were not very talkative, and thus the atmosphere at Jessica's house was so overwhelming for me. Not only was there a big family, but each one talked nonstop like a machine gun firing away. Moreover, everyone would just start talking regardless of whether someone else was already speaking. I felt like I had to be some kind of superhuman to keep up with them all. For my part, I was desperately trying to explain, "I'm not her boyfriend. I'm just a coworker. You don't have to be shy about it. How long have you 2 been dating?" was the kind of thing they kept asking, not listening to a word I said. I felt hopeless. However, they weren't bad people. Proof of that was the endless stream of food and drinks they brought out. By that time, I had completely missed my chance to return to my hotel. Then Jessica, who had been resting upstairs, came down to the first floor. Whether the medicine had worked or resting helped, Jessica's complexion had improved. Seeing me being bombarded with questions, Jessica sighed deeply. "Oh, Jake, I'm so sorry," she said. Jessica then explained to her family that I was just a coworker, and I had given her a ride home because she felt ill. Jessica's family seemed disappointed to find out I wasn't her boyfriend, but they quickly adjusted. "Whether you're a coworker or not, you're still our guest. Is there anything you don't like to eat? You're staying over, right?" "Well, I was thinking of staying at a hotel, and there's no worry for my dinner. I can grab something at a convenience store or something," I replied. But the adults insisted on having a drink and chat, and the kids kept asking me to stay, saying, "You have to stay over." Feeling pressured, I finally called the hotel to cancel my reservation. Jessica leaned over and whispered apologetically in my ear, "I'm really sorry. Are you okay with this?" Even though Jessica said that, the truth was I was starting to enjoy this place. While having some drinks and food, I'd really warmed up to everyone. I'm not great at talking with women, but the men in this house were quite chatty and made it fun to converse. And while I might be a bit shy, I've always loved lively atmospheres. Being an only child, I've always dreamed of big families. Everyone here is pretty assertive, but they're also hilarious, and Jessica's mom makes some delicious food. Plus, Jessica's twin brothers, Brandon and Kyle, are 26, close to my age, so we got along. No, it's my first time in such a lively setting, but I'm starting to have fun. I'm the one who should apologize, staying over at my boss's family home like this. No, I'm glad you're here. My family's a bit loud, but if you're enjoying yourself, then it's worth it. I couldn't help but think that perhaps Jessica's considerate personality came from this family background. As the night went on and more drinks were poured, Brandon and Kyle brought out an old photo album of Jessica's childhood. Looking through it, I wondered how unexpected this whole situation was, going on a business trip with my attractive boss to her hometown and ending up coming close with her family. Even though it was an unexpected event, seeing how pleased Jessica seemed with me bonding with her family made me glad that I came here. Lost in these thoughts, Tyler, who had been in the bathroom, returned. "How far have you guys gotten?" To which Brandon responded, "We just talked about when Jessica finished elementary school." A tipsy Tyler, along with Brandon and Kyle, had been telling me various stories from Jessica's childhood. "Oh, right. Mind if I continue? You're not bored, are you?" To be honest, I suspected the stories from the older guys were a bit exaggerated, but they were darn entertaining. I was eager to hear more. "Stop talking about embarrassing stuff. Okay." Jessica blushed, a sight of her I'd never seen at the office, and it was something new. Even then, the family revolved around the stories about Jessica, and eventually, Tyler, perhaps too tipsy, dozed off. I noticed others, including the children, had gone to bed. In the kitchen, I could see Jessica and the eldest son's wife starting to clean up. Catching a glimpse of Jessica in an apron, an image I'd never be able to see in the office, I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. But as Brandon observed me, he whispered to me with a smirk on his face, "You have a crush on my sister, don't you? It's so obvious." "What?" "No, I mean," I blushed in panic. Kyle also chimed in, whispering, "Just spill the beans. Maybe Jessica feels the same way. Maybe I shouldn't give it away." After they teased me enough, the two brothers headed to their rooms upstairs. I was left alone in the living room, pondering over Brandon and Kyle's words. I had chosen not to confess my feelings, but what if Jessica felt the same way about me? I tried to keep calm, but memories of the photographs in Jessica's life journey filled my mind. Jessica has always been deeply loved by her family. I thought if I could be loved by someone like her, I'd be truly blessed. Encouraged by Brandon and Kyle's hints, I began to feel some courage. I felt that if I missed this moment, I might never find the nerve again. So once the cleaning was done and Jessica returned from the kitchen, I mustered the courage and confessed my feelings. "I've liked you for a long time now. I always felt you were out of my league. I thought I should just give up, but I couldn't. I want to become someone special for you." Jessica was clearly surprised by my sudden confession, and her cheeks soon turned red. "Do you remember asking me why I was always caring about you? When I first saw you, I thought you were like my father, big in stature but kind-hearted inside. However, during a business gathering, I overheard you talking about how your size was an insecurity for you. That's when I felt the urge to cheer you up. Indeed, I always felt self-conscious about my large frame and timid personality. I thought you shouldn't feel that way. You always step up for the physical work at the office, right? And you offer to help out with chores, always with a smile. Initially, I just wished you'd have more confidence. But before I knew it, I found myself caring about you more and more." I had no idea she had noticed all those little things about me. My heart was racing and my palms were sweaty, but when I looked into Jessica's eyes, they were glistening and wavering. I wasn't the only one who was nervous. She took a deep breath and said, "It was me who has liked you from the beginning. If you're okay with it, would you date me?" Holding back my urge to jump in joy, I took her hand and replied, Yes, thank you so much." Bowing my head, but remembering how sweaty my hands were, I tried to pull away. Yet Jessica held on tightly, making it impossible to let go. I still remember the happiness I felt over such a small thing. The next day, after announcing our relationship to Jessica's entire family, they seemed ready to throw a party despite it being early morning. We managed to avoid that, but I was overjoyed by how warmly her family accepted me. After saying our goodbyes to Jessica's family, we took the same Amtrak train home. Sitting next to each other, we sneakily held hands. It felt like I was a teenager again, and also a bit embarrassing. Just holding hands made my heart race like crazy. She's truly a beautiful person. A year into our relationship, we got married. Our wedding was lively with Jessica's family in full attendance. During the ceremony, I found myself reminiscing. Me, with my big, bear-like physique, and my stunning boss, Jess. Despite our differences, we became closer. Thinking back to the business trip to her hometown, everything happened so fast. As I recalled this, a performance started by Jessica's siblings, making everyone laugh until they nearly rolled over. At the same time, realizing I was becoming a part of this wonderful family lifted my spirits. Whether it was happiness or amusement or both, tears streamed down my face. "You're crying already," said Jessica, wiping away my tears. Dressed in a beautiful white wedding gown, Jessica's beauty was so blinding that it only made me tear up more. Seeing this, even Jessica's brothers and father couldn't help but tear up themselves. "Jessica, I'm sorry for crying so much. I'm just so happy and grateful. Thank you for making me a part of such an amazing family. I know I'm emotional, but I promise to be a strong man. Just let me cry for today." As I sniffled, Jessica gently wiped my eyes with a handkerchief and said, "It's okay for you to be a crybaby. I'll always be here to wipe away your tears." She accepts me for who I am. I might have married an angel. That's genuinely how I felt, and it was the best day of my life.
It seems like there's a misunderstanding. Here, no matter how outstanding your work is, you are ultimately just a cog in the company's wheel. And I'm the one who keeps that wheel turning. In other words, if you can't follow my orders, you don't deserve to work here. In a relentless tone, he rattled off nonstop. Then the president, after gulping down the contents of his mud cup, barked, "You are fired. Pack your stuff and get out of here immediately." Taken aback by the president's sudden declaration, I had no chance to argue and had no choice but to leave the company. But who could have predicted that the president would later regret this firing and end up expressing a big apology? My name is Tom. After working for a long time at an advertising company I joined as a new graduate, I left and started my own company in the same industry a few years ago. In other words, I'm the president of the company. However, running a company is quite challenging, and it's been difficult to get it on track, especially lately due to rising prices and conflicts. The needs and values of customers have been changing. I've been getting work from a client who's looked out for me since my days as an employee, all out of good old friendship. It's helping me make ends meet for now. But who knows how long this will last? How can I consistently get stable work orders? I run a small company, but I have a few employees to take care of. I can't let them all end up on the street. Even though I'm anxious about the uncertain future, I'm living through these uneasy days. That was until one particular day. After finishing a meeting with a client, I was standing at the terminal waiting for my bus. It was the evening rush hour, and there were a lot of people moving around in front of me. Then suddenly, one of them caught my eye. Ha! Her long brown hair fluttered in the wind, and she had a sharp nose and a slightly long face. She might have been reading a paperback looking down, but I was sure it was her. Without realizing it, I dashed to get to her. Hey, maybe because I hadn't run like that in a while, I was out of breath. I've really been slacking on exercise lately. Oh, is that you, Tom? Yes, it's been a long time, Manager Catherine. My former boss, Manager Catherine, closed her book with an unchanged smile. It's been a while. Who would have thought we'd meet here? Indeed, it was quite a surprise. I almost told her how happy I was to see her, but held back the words. Looking at her, I was startled. She seemed to have lost weight, especially around her cheeks, and appeared overall smaller. Manager, what is it? You seem a bit tired. Ah, she tried to smile, but her eyes weren't smiling. Is something wrong? Then she sighed deeply, as if she had given up. Actually, I've recently quit my job. What? I was so surprised that I raised my voice, apologizing to those around me. My mind was swirling with thoughts. Maybe. Catherine shook her head desperately, but I continued anyway. It's my fault, isn't it? I still can't forget Catherine's expression at that time. The company I used to work for was famous in the industry, partly because the president, John, was emerging as a prominent and ambitious businessman. At first, I was proud to have joined such an amazing company right out of college, but gradually I became troubled by the situation where I had no choice but to follow the forceful and unreasonable rules set by John. Hey, make sure you get this client no matter what it takes. Yes, you look like you want to say something. As long as you are here, you know what'll happen if you cross me, right? Yes. When I denied it, John glared at me sharply. I had planned to speak up today, but when faced with his reptilian sharp gaze, I froze and ended up saying nothing. Back then, my sales performance was excellent, standing out from the others. It seemed likely that I would be promoted smoothly, and I was confident about it. Little did I know that this confidence would backfire. That day was the day of the monthly regular meeting. I was irritated because my sales performance hadn't been growing as expected recently. The meeting started with John's usual long talk, frowning over the less than stellar current situation and pointing it out. Sometimes he would mix in stories of his past exploits, bragging, and picking someone to publicly lecture depending on his mood that day. I really hated this time. It was no different from bullying. I couldn't grasp the content of his loud speeches at all. So noisy, I realized I had said it out loud. Worst of all, John heard it clearly. What's that, Tom? Got a complaint? No, it's just. He glared at me fiercely, his eyes shining like a predator's. He then directed that gaze at Catherine. Hey, how can you not control even one of your subordinates? I'm sorry. She showed her apology, likely against her will. In this awkward atmosphere, the meeting began, but I couldn't focus on anyone's stories. The earlier exchange enveloped me like a black whirlpool. Maybe today is the day to speak my mind. After all, I have been the top performer here. I had the right to voice an opinion or two. Convinced, I waited for a break in the conversation and then spoke up. Excuse me, President, but don't you think your approach might be impractical in today's world? Thinking it's impractical is just an excuse. Listen, the motto in sales is to push and keep pushing. If you target the moment the other party flinches, you'll surely boost sales. That's how I made this company big. But in this era, isn't that approach more likely to backfire? Hey, Tom, listen. Catherine approached me with concern, but I continued without paying attention. Compliance has become much stricter these days. Maybe we should try to meet them halfway. Hey, since when did you become so bossy, huh? John stood up, slamming his hands on the table. His eyes were bloodshot with anger, boiling with rage. You seem to be under some misconception. No matter how good your work is, you're just a part of the company's machinery, and I am the one who drives that machinery. In other words, those who can't listen to me have no place here. He said this smoothly, then downed his cup of coffee and announced, "You're fired. Pack your stuff and get out of here." He then reclined in his chair, crossed his arms, and glared at me. The deep furrow in his brow made his handsome face seem even more ruthless. Wait a minute, please. Catherine raised her voice. What is it, Catherine? Do you have a complaint too? It's too much to just announce a firing like that. These arrogant types won't get it unless you do this. But John, smirking, interrupted her. This happened because you didn't supervise properly. I'll need a report on this later. And with that, he started going through documents, signaling the meeting to continue without looking at me again. That's how I left the company without using any of my accrued leave. When I visited the company for the resignation procedures, I unexpectedly ran into John, who said something shocking. About your resignation, I've told HR that it's for personal reasons. His attitude was as if it was obvious that I would accept this, and I was left speechless. Tom, I turned around at Catherine's pained call. Manager, thank you for everything. As I was about to shake hands, she said, "You shouldn't have had to leave," and bowed deeply. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you as your boss." "No, this is fine. I left the company without really looking at her face. It's all because I got carried away and spoke out against the president. I had been smoldering with regret since that day, but Catherine shook her head vigorously and said, "No, it's not your fault. It's all his fault." She said this disparagingly about John, her face filled with loathing. "Even after you left, he continued the same way, treating employees like toys, using and discarding them. I don't understand how someone like that can be a president," Catherine said bitterly, twirling her hair around her finger. I thought I just had to endure, but I couldn't stand his methods anymore and decided to quit myself. "Manager, where are you working now, Tom?" "I'm not a manager anymore." "Oh, right. So, Catherine, where are you working now?" Her eyes shadowed over. "I'm currently enjoying being unemployed." "What? Why?" She sighed and continued in a resigned tone, "Job hunting isn't going well. It's all John's fault." "Did he do something?" "I don't have any proof, but for some reason I was rejected during the document screening. Even if I finally made it to the interview when I mentioned the name of my previous company, there was a feeling of awkwardness and nothing happened after that. Maybe he was under pressure. Maybe he's trying to harass me or something." I never thought the exceptionally talented Catherine would be in such a situation. An idea rose in my head. I looked at her face. What if it's okay with you? Would you like to work at my company? It's quite unstable right now, so I can't offer much salary, and it's a step down from before." Oh, she looked clearly confused. "If it's a problem, it can just be temporary until you find something else." "Oh, but I'm not forcing you." "Is that okay?" Catherine looked at me quizzically, peering into my face. In front of her beauty, which could rival that of a magazine model, my heart raced. "Yes, if you are okay with it." Thus, Catherine started working at our company. Since her arrival, the previously somewhat subdued atmosphere in the office was filled with energy and elegance. In John's company, despite being only 30, she had become a manager. Naturally, her skillful work quickly made her an object of admiration among the other employees. Before she came, most employees seemed to be working with a sense of resignation, but inspired by Catherine's unwavering dedication to her work, everyone gradually became more motivated. In response, the company's sales began to slowly increase. She was nothing short of a savior for the company, and I couldn't be more grateful to her. "Boss, good work today, and thanks." Unusually, one of the employees initiated a conversation. Previously, I seemed to be thinking only about the company's sales and had an air of being unapproachable, so I never felt comfortable talking to employees like this. Recently, however, I started to hear more and more people talking to me during my break. I was beginning to realize that the atmosphere within the company had improved considerably. This was a pleasant change, thanks to Catherine's arrival. At that moment, she was in front of me, intently looking at her computer screen. It seemed my thoughts about her were evident on my face. "You look happy. What are you thinking about?" "Well, it's nothing." I tried to hide a bashful smile, but the employee kept grinning. "I've been thinking there's more than just a work relationship between you and Catherine, right? Something seems fishy." "What are you talking about?" "There's nothing like that." I denied it, but I'm sure my face was probably showing an embarrassingly big smile. "Well, I guess a beauty like her wouldn't be interested in the boss." His cheeky comment was too accurate to argue against. "That's true," I said, and that self-deprecating laugh made me feel incredibly empty. I had been working hard and was finally starting to feel like a proper boss. Sales were on the rise. Everything was supposed to be going well until he showed up. "Hey, bring out the person in charge of this pathetic company." Like any other Monday morning, I was leisurely checking my emails when suddenly a thunderous shout caught my attention. I rushed to the reception area, wondering what was happening. "President, a long time no see." "Tom." Surprisingly, John had shown up at the company without any prior notice. "Looks like things are going well here. Did you pull some strings?" His mocking tone was laced with a palpable sense of disgust. "No, it's all thanks to the hard work of our employees." Before I could say more, John got straight to the point. "I heard Catherine's working here now." Yes, she is. The company's recent improvement is partly thanks to her hard work. Then John, raising his eyebrows in an exaggerated manner, said something outrageous. Why did you hire her? Don't tell me you. I hired her because when we met by chance, she mentioned she was struggling with job hunting. That's all. Fire her. What? Why? Looking into John's bloodshot eyes was like facing a wild beast. I asked him the reason while hiding my trembling. What do you mean? It's simple. I don't like that she's working somewhere else without my knowledge. I'm sorry, but she's an important asset to our company. I intend to keep her on board if she agrees. What did you say? Please leave. No matter what you say, I won't comply. Getting a little too big for your britches, huh? Well, fine. I have my own plans. Just you wait and regret this. The man, unable to contain his anger, kicked a nearby trash can and stormed out of the office like the wind. But as John said, I began to regret my hasty words. Starting the next day, clients and business partners began contacting us, rethinking their contracts with us. Just when things were stabilizing, what was happening? I called one of our partners and asked for the reason. After some hesitation, he finally said with a trembling voice, Actually, we've been told by a certain company we do business with that if we continue working with you, they'll end their dealings with us. Is that company by any chance? Yes, it's the one you used to work at. So it was as I suspected. Holding the phone, I slumped. As expected, John had found out which companies we were dealing with and pressured them to stop doing business with us. I was at a loss, but firing Catherine was unthinkable. The faces of each employee came to mind. Some of them happily announced that they had recently given birth to a child. Then a certain shadow suddenly stood in front of me. Boss Catherine. Her expression was determined, as if she had made up her mind. This is all because of me. Catherine, that's not. Please let me resign. She cut me off and bowed her head. As I struggled to find words, I heard several footsteps, and the door swung open. What are you saying, Catherine? You can't leave. Why would you need to leave? Hearing this, the employees gathered around her. Encouraged by their support, I looked firmly at her and said, They're right. There's no reason for you to leave, but this is undoubtedly my responsibility as the president. I clenched my fists, making a decision. I won't run away this time. I'll fight head on. I won't let anyone who tries to hurt our valuable employees get away with it. That's right. Let's show the true strength of our company. Where else should we give our best if not here? Inspired by my words, the employees raised their fists in the air. Catherine's eyes seemed slightly moist witnessing this unity. Thus, all the employees united and visited each company that had refused to deal with us. We faced rejection time and again, and many, fearing John's influence, apologetically turned us away just at the mention of our company name. Nevertheless, everyone tirelessly tried to approach and steadily cultivated new business relationships. John's pressure was more damaging than imagined. At one point, it even threatened our company's survival. Yet everyone continued without complaint, working diligently. Thanks to their efforts, sales gradually increased. When we achieved record annual profits, we celebrated together, holding hands. I was confident we had won a significant victory against John. Then one day, something happened. As soon as I arrived at the office, I noticed a commotion around the reception. Rushing over, I saw John, but instead of his usual arrogant demeanor, he seemed troubled. What brings you here, President? Please ask Catherine to come back to my company. What are you talking about? I asked. He approached me with an uncharacteristically humble attitude. Please, I'm begging you. Since she left, things have been falling apart. I realize now that Catherine is indispensable to us. Please ask her to return. As I was about to refuse, Catherine appeared, poised and confident. Catherine, I've been waiting for you. I was wrong. Please come back to us. He begged desperately. I'll double your salary or name your price. Just come back, please. Despite all the despicable things John has done, he still holds power in this industry. The scale of the company and the value of the name John are enormous. It would be strange for a girl as talented as Catherine, whom the president of such a company asked to return, to continue working at such a small company forever. I waited for her reply. However, without changing her complexion, Catherine answered, "I refuse." Huh? Both John and I were taken aback by her unexpected response. "President, I appreciate your recognition, but it's not about the money," she continued sternly. "How do you explain pressuring companies associated with ours?" "Pressure? No, I wouldn't do that. I've heard everything. Did you think we were unaware?" Catherine said. John, sensing the serious air around her, replied weakly, "Can you please stop interfering with us? I apologize for everything, but please leave." John looked at her with desperate eyes, but eventually slumped and left. The office was tense for a while, but Catherine, in a mood, said, "All right, back to work. Boss, don't you have a meeting soon? You'll be late. Let's get ready." Later, John's company, having lost all credibility, went bankrupt. He was stripped of wealth and honor and never recovered. Despite his efforts, his past misdeeds became widely known in the industry, and even banks refused to deal with him. At the same time, as the company disappeared, John was nowhere to be seen. Rumor has it that he started working as a day laborer to pay off the debts left behind when the company folded. But his pride as a famous president got in the way and caused him constant trouble with his colleagues. The whereabouts of John, now constantly changing jobs, remained unknown. However, the employees of his bankrupt company were the true victims. Despite the bankruptcy, the company's long-standing reputation meant that it had many talented employees. Even after Catherine resigned, the employees who admired her stayed in touch. Some of them came to work at our company, thinking that if Catherine was there, it must be a good place. It was a fortunate time, as the company was stable, and we were discussing expanding our workforce. Unlike before, when I was only worried about tomorrow's finances, I could now manage the company with some leeway. But my feelings were complicated. After all, it was because of Catherine that we had achieved so much. As a president, I kept questioning if this was okay. Whenever I saw Catherine happily going to her work, I felt a twinge of jealousy. I hated this small-minded side of myself. Then John's face came to mind. John's method was not one that I was praised for, but I was surprised that he, too, was in a hurry to ignore such an excellent junior. I think his unreasonable bravado about having to show off as a president and his intense jealousy towards Catherine resulted in him acting in such a coercive way. I began to understand how John might have felt. "Boss, I've left the report for you." "Thank you, Catherine." "Please call me just Kathy." "Well, it's just that you were my boss before, but now I'm your subordinate." "Right. But do you have a moment? I wanted to ask you something." I managed to change the subject. "Yes, what is it?" "You remember when John came here and asked you to return to his company? Why did you refuse?" "Simply because I didn't want to, that's all." "I mean, why did you stay here? You're talented enough to work at a much bigger place." Catherine sat down on the sofa and began to share her feelings. "When I was at the previous company, I was really dissatisfied with their methods and rules. But I couldn't say anything. I was afraid of what would happen if I did." She paused, looking at me. "You stood up to John with courage, even though it led to you being forced out of the company. I saw it as something bright. You looked more impressive than anyone." "That's it?" I never knew she saw me like that. "Ever since you left, I've been working frantically. However, I've been wondering more and more if this is okay for me. I quit my job in a hurry, but what should I do now?" Just when I was thinking about it, the president called out to me, and I decided to follow this person for the rest of my life. "Oh, I see. You taught me the importance of living life without regrets." "Thank you, Tom. Thank you for believing in me and following me." It was a bit embarrassing to bow to each other again, but knowing Catherine's thoughts made me incredibly happy. Thanks to the daily efforts of Catherine and the other employees, the company's performance steadily improved. Eventually, we achieved one of our long-term goals, taking the company public. Yet my gratitude towards the employees who stood by me during the hard times never waned. Then another significant change occurred. Today, I will finally get your answer. Well, it's just that Catherine, with her wide, bright eyes, when I started the company, I was desperate. I didn't want to hate myself for opposing John. When John's pressure nearly led to bankruptcy, I regretted standing up to him many times. Why am I the only one who faces this? How many sleepless nights have I spent thinking about this? Even so, there was someone who saw me, even though I was so reckless. If I had given in and stayed with Johan's company, I would have ended up living a hollow life, searching for reasons why things didn't work out. In this world where accommodation is common, the true winners of life are those who can cast aside such considerations and choose a path without regrets. Now that I've met Catherine and gained invaluable colleagues, I feel this more strongly than ever. I want to continue to push forward toward further goals without losing sight of what is important. Of course, important people too. An employee who can't even handle work of this level is useless. You high school dropout. Get lost? When Lena was newly appointed as a manager of the development department, she started making cruel insults towards me after finding out I was a high school dropout. However, to directly insult me as incompetent and useless is unacceptable behavior for a professional. If I stay at this workplace any longer, I will only be treated worse, I understand. I resign from this company. Finally, who you are, huh? Someone like you must have been a burden on companies until now. Please leave right away. I had no choice but to write and submit my resignation letter on the spot. However, the next day after resigning, I received a frantic phone call from the frantic CEO Johnson. My name is Bob. I'm a 56-year-old ordinary company employee. I didn't like studying at school, so after being kicked out from high school, I immediately got a job at Johnson Construction Incorporated and joined the development department. CEO Johnson has encouraged me since long ago when I was completely clueless as a high school dropout. Thanks to him, I think I was able to make career advancement. So until the day I resigned, I wanted to repay CEO Johnson as much as I could. The development department requires handling various difficult adjustments, so it's not very popular. But I like this job, imagining that the systems I devised make the work easier and more understandable for factory workers and that convenient machines can be easily used at any factory to reduce the burden on those working on-site motivated me to work hard. Through this diligent work style, time passed and I gained top-class knowledge and experience in this industry. Following my guidance, many employees joined forces to complete major projects. Of course, hardships and setbacks are inevitable until completion. Things often don't go smoothly, and it's rather rare for things to proceed smoothly. But that's why the joy of somehow managing to complete a project and successfully present it is so great. I have a wife and young daughter, and both of them support me to get home as early as possible. For the family that always welcomes me with a smile, I work hard, of course, since I'm assigned a large workload. I often end up getting home late. To make time for my family, I sacrifice break times and try to finish work even just 1 minute earlier, but I can probably work this hard because the development job suits my personality. My colleagues jokingly call me a typical workaholic, but I'm just doing what I like. Ever since this company hired me when I was young, I've been devoted solely to development work. For me, my current workplace is like a heaven where I can continue verifying my full potential. However, I also value time with family, so on holidays, I spend time with them. Although I love my work, I believe life has many enjoyable things besides just work. Thinking that way on weekends, I would take my wife and daughter traveling, shopping, and enjoy family bonding time. I was satisfied with this lifestyle, balancing work and family, and wanted to keep working while preserving this happiness. Fortunately, CEO Johnson also seems to value family, judging by how he never showed an unpleasant reaction when I took leave or occasionally left early for family reasons. CEO Johnson, who trained me as a developer since the company was small, would often chat with me. Sometimes he treated me to lunch or drinks, and we deepened our bond like family. We discussed maintaining a balance between the company's growth and daily family life. But that work-life balance was abruptly disrupted one day. The trigger was CEO Johnson collapsing while out. 2 weeks ago, I had heard he hadn't been feeling well for years, but he lost consciousness at work and was taken to the hospital. We were told the shocking news that the CEO was hospitalized. Apparently, CEO Johnson's life wasn't in danger, but concerning issues requiring surgery were found on his heart. Fortunately, the surgery was successful, but due to his age, he is currently hospitalized. Until then, the vice CEO had been filling in for the CEO's duties, with the senior managing director taking over the vacant vice CEO position, resulting in temporary personnel shifts within the company. In the midst of this, a woman named Lena was appointed as the new manager of the development department, where I work. She was apparently the CEO's relative and rumored to be a talented woman who graduated from a prestigious university. We were filled with expectations that she must be a capable person, but those hopes were quickly shattered on her first day of appointment. As we were diligently working, Lena, the manager, appeared in the development department. The employees thought she had come to greet us and were ready to welcome her, but Lena stood in front of us with her arms crossed, silently glaring at each one of us. When it was my turn, she glared at me with an intense expression, leaving me utterly confused. Since I've come to the development department, I'll have you thoroughly eliminate waste and maximize results. Give up on the lukewarm environment until now and diligently follow my methods. These were Lena's first words, making me a little nervous that I couldn't afford any mistakes. The previous manager was an amiable person who was always smiling, and employees trusted him enough to casually consult him or apologize to report mistakes. But with this new manager, Lena, there was no doubt she would scold us sternly with that harsh expression if we made a blunder. With Lena advocating a results-first policy, everyone in the development department was tense. That day ended with her abrupt declaration that left us baffled, but the reason for Lena's outburst soon became clear. The next day, Lena suddenly barged into my section and yelled loudly enough for the whole office to hear, "Is there an employee named Bob? Where is Bob?" She kept shouting loudly, leaving everyone in the section dumbfounded. As the one call out, I got up from my desk without understanding the situation and walked over to Lena. "I'm Bob, but what can I do for you?" I couldn't recall doing anything at the company to deserve being scolded, nor did I remember being glared at by Lena, whom I had just met yesterday. Perplexed by this treatment, I cautiously asked her. Then, in front of everyone in the buzzing section, Lena said something outrageous to me. "I heard you're a high school dropout. Is that true? It must be a mistake." "Yes, I am indeed a high school dropout." Confused by her sudden remark, I answered honestly. Lena's face then contorted as she spat out. "Our company has business partners nationwide, and yet a high school dropout employee has slipped in. What a waste of salary." From that day on, Lena started assigning an onslaught of tasks to the entire development department. It was an overwhelming workload, perhaps twice what we had been handling before. My colleagues soon gave up halfway through, earning harsh scolding from Lena, but I made every effort possible and somehow managed to complete the work. Though I wasn't conscious of it, I may have become stubborn about showing Lena, who had disdained me for being a high school dropout, that I could do the job regardless of my education. In the end, I was the only member of the development department who completed Lena's instructions. I had expected her to finally acknowledge my ability, but it seemed to backfire. After that, Lena singled me out completely. While my colleagues' workloads were reduced back to normal levels, I was assigned special tasks that kept me busy day after day. This would surely interfere with my regular duties. Feeling a sense of crisis, I mustered the courage to directly appeal to Lena. "My workload is a bit too much. Do you have a problem with that? I'm the manager. I instructed you to do it, so just obediently do as you're told." She dismissed me without listening, leaving me with pent-up frustration. The tasks themselves were simple, but the sheer volume was the issue. No matter how minor they were claimed to be, I was spending over 5 extra hours per day on them as instructed. As a result, I was consumed by work from morning till night. Even after getting home, my mind was filled with work matters. I no longer had time to converse with my family, and my wife and daughter were so worried about me that they couldn't even call out to me. At this rate, my health would surely deteriorate. Thinking this, I pressed Lena further. "But having me single-handedly take care of this massive amount of tasks is too reckless, isn't it?" "What a whiny thing to say. Doing work is part of being a company employee, or is it that with your high school dropout brain, you don't understand societal norms? Lena dismissed me without listening, sneering at my opinion, but I couldn't back down after being treated like this. However, at this rate, I won't be able to maintain the quality of my regular work assignments since the tasks are concentrated solely on me. Could you please consider reducing the volume? That's not just a matter of your low brain power. There's no such convenient deal where you can slack off and still get paid. It seemed nothing got through to Lena. If this continues, not only will my work be half-baked, but I won't be able to make my family happy when I get home because I'll be preoccupied with work. I was about to open my mouth again in an attempt to get Lena to understand when she said, "An employee who can't even handle work of this level is useless. You high school dropout, get lost." "Excuse me," utterly shocked, I instinctively asked her to repeat herself. To directly insult me as incompetent and useless to my face is unacceptable behavior for a professional. But Lena, looking down at me with a disdainful gaze as I stared at her in disbelief, spat out, "Didn't you hear me? I said get lost, or can't your high school dropout brain understand?" "Do you mean you were firing me? I can't accept that. Please tell me why I deserve to be fired. Why would I, who has diligently worked until now, suddenly be fired without reason?" Furious, I fired back strongly. Lena then looked at me with a condescending expression and sneered. "I don't want to delve into it. Weirdly, I didn't say you're fired. I'm saying this department doesn't need you." Apparently, even Lena understands that as a manager, she doesn't have the authority to unilaterally fire an employee. However, she maintained her mocking expression as she hesitantly continued. "But for someone like you, a high school dropout, working in the development department of a large company like ours is probably too difficult. Don't you think? I believe there is a more suitable department for you." "So, you were telling me to leave the development department because I'm a high school dropout?" I asked persistently while restraining my anger. The rest of the department was focused on our exchange, and the atmosphere was tense. But Lena stated it as if it were obvious. "That's right. It's settled, isn't it? Being undereducated is proof that you've been running away from studying all this time." She then flicked my computer screen in a mocking way. "A high school dropout like you can't use a computer, can you? You've just been pretending to work in front of the computer." With that, she arbitrarily deleted the data I was working on. I turned pale and frantically tried to stop her. "What are you doing? Don't tamper with it without permission." "No need to panic. I'm just deleting what you didn't need. I thought it would be better for a high school dropout like you to find work that doesn't require using your brain." No matter how I tried to reason with her, Lena wouldn't listen. Utterly exasperated by her outrageous behavior, I realized that if I stayed at this workplace any longer, I would only face worse treatment. Having a deep sigh, I steeled my resolve. "I understand. I will resign from this company." "Finally realized your place, huh? Someone like you must have been a burden on companies until now. Please disappear right away." I couldn't find any words to respond, merely muttering to myself, "This company will probably go bankrupt." I had no choice but to write and submit my resignation letter on the spot. As I returned to my desk to prepare for resignation, Lena gloated with raucous laughter. It was decided that I would resign at the end of the month, so I used my remaining paid leave for time off at home. On the day of my official resignation, I departed from the company I had worked at for so many years. I felt a tinge of sadness that my decades of hard work could be so easily erased, but at K Company, I could no longer muster the spirit to put in more effort. However, the day after resigning, as I was leisurely passing time at home, my cell phone suddenly started ringing frantically. The caller display showed it was the CEO. Just as I expected he would call, I answered calmly, but from the other end came a frantic atmosphere. "Bob, is that you?" "Yes, it's me. I'm very happy for you that you made a recovery and were discharged from the hospital, sir." The CEO's voice sounded quite frantic, but that was understandable. After I calmly congratulated the CEO on his discharge, he'd hardly cut me off. "No, never mind my health. More importantly, why aren't you at the company? Why did you submit a resignation letter?" "Well, after you were hospitalized, there were some complications." Picking up on the implication of my words, the CEO briefly held his breath, but soon said, The company is in serious trouble right now. Can you please come to the company no matter what? I don't mind, but I think Lena, the manager, will be angry with me. Sensing there was meaning behind my words, the CEO immediately reacted. Lena was involved in your resignation. Yes, well, all the development department employees are aware of the situation. Hearing my response, the CEO let out a bitter sigh. I see, I understand. Then we'll have Lena attend as well. Bob, can you get ready and come to the company right away? Apparently, with me gone, the company had fallen into serious trouble. Hearing the CEO's frantic voice, I agreed to head over immediately. If it's the CEO's request, I'll head over right away. Thank you. I know it's rushed, but please come as soon as possible. After saying that, the CEO hung up with what sounded like a relieved tone. A natural smile appeared on my face as I moved the phone from my ear. I had a feeling this would happen around the time the CEO was discharged, but I was surprised at the impeccable timing. Pondering this, I calmly got ready and left home. After a long absence, I headed to the company and the designated meeting room as instructed. Standing outside the door, I could hear voices coming from inside. Peeking through the gap, it seemed the CEO and Lena had already arrived. So I'll ask again, explain why this happened. Well, about that. Bombarded with the CEO's insistent questioning, even Lena could only hang her head and mutter something inaudibly. Her demeanor further incensed the CEO. You're the manager of the development department, aren't you? Explain why all the systems are down, and you can't even answer anything about Bob's resignation. The moment my name was mentioned, Lena flinched like she had been struck by lightning. Yet she still stubbornly refused to open her mouth. If Bob from the development department was here, he could fix the system issues. But I hear you're the one who drove Bob to resign. Well, you see, there was a reason for that. Lena's voice grew progressively smaller and shakier, clearly cowering even from the other side of the door. In contrast, the CEO's voice grew increasingly angry and louder. Explain yourself. You were Bob's direct supervisor. Actually, about the reason for Bob's resignation, there were some circumstances. Lena was being evasive, leaving the situation in an awkward atmosphere of not knowing what to do next. Seizing this timing, I forcefully opened the door to the meeting room. Pardon the interruption, it's me, Bob. Spotting me, the CEO's face broke into a delighted smile as he exclaimed happily, Bob, I've been waiting for you. Thank you for coming quickly. In contrast to the CEO beckoning me expectantly, Lena was pursing her lips with displeasure, shooting me resentful glares. But I ignored it and greeted the CEO. Long time no see, CEO. I'm glad to see you're feeling better. I'm very happy for you that you made a recovery, sir. Yes, I'm completely recovered now. Thank you. Seeing the CEO smiling in front of me, I felt relieved. The CEO gripped both my hands firmly with joy. After the reunion greetings concluded, I grinned and said, It seems you're having some trouble this time. What happened? Yes, about that, Bob. Just as the CEO was about to explain, Lena interrupted sharply with a glare. Why are you here? You're an outsider now. You can't just barge in, Lena protested. I didn't come on my own. I called Bob here, the CEO stated. Lena froze momentarily in surprise at the CEO's words, but she quickly regained her composure and furrowed her brow as she confronted him. Why did you summon Bob, CEO? The company can function without Bob. He's solely in charge of systems management. He's an essential asset to us. Lena stared blankly at the CEO, seeming utterly clueless about what he was saying. It seemed she truly had no information about my importance, despite repeatedly insulting me as a high school dropout and incompetent before. As she remained oblivious to my role, I couldn't help but smirk and offer, since you appear to be completely unaware of the situation, shall I explain it to you? My condescending tone immediately caused Lena's ears to turn beet red as she glared angrily at me, but I calmly met her gaze and stated the facts. I developed the nationwide factory systems used across all 50 of Johnson Construction's plants. All the management, maintenance, and inspections of the systems we've utilized were handled solely by me. Still, Lena seemed unable to comprehend my words, furrowing her brow in utter confusion as to what I was telling her, so I elaborated further for her benefit. The production manager systems used at the 50 factories across the country were created by me. However, the other day when I resigned, I initialized the systems before leaving the company. Even if you claim you made them, the systems belong to the company, don't they? How dare you do such a unilateral thing? I'll make you pay for the company's losses. Finally grasping the situation, Lena turned pale as she confronted me furiously, but her criticism completely missed the mark. I personally hold the patents for the factory systems in use during my employment. I merely let the company use them, so it's only natural I deleted them upon resigning. That can't be true. There's no way a mere high school dropout employee. Lena's eyes widened dramatically as if she had finally understood everything, seemingly never having properly reviewed the handover documents from the previous manager. Yet even if she had observed my daily work, she should have grasped the importance of the systems I handled. But Lena clearly had no interest in her subordinates' work nor any intention of diligently performing her managerial duties. In our company, patents developed by individuals belong to those individuals as per employment contracts. So the patent rights to the production management systems across all factories belong to me personally, not to the company. That's precisely why we had Bob working in the development department all this time, and when I was hospitalized and then informed that Bob had resigned, I was so shocked I nearly collapsed again, the CEO said, clutching his chest with a heavy sigh. While I felt bad for causing the CEO unnecessary worry, Lena was the root cause of this situation. As I gave her a smile, she vehemently shook her head in disbelief. No way! I can't believe it! You're just an incompetent high school dropout employee. There's no way an undereducated person like you could handle the difficult task of systems development. You may not want to believe it, but those are the facts. I had always hated studying confined to set curricula in school. Instead, I voraciously studied and accumulated knowledge in fields that piqued my interest. When I first joined Johnson Construction, I heard about plans to implement production management systems at the factories. Intrigued, I initially self-studied before the CEO began supporting me, allowing me to attend seminars while undertaking systems development. That sparked my journey from creating simple initial systems to the complex advanced ones currently used. My work underpinned all the company's production management systems. As I explained with a smile, Lena fell silent with tears in her eyes. After a pause, she finally spoke, trying a different approach. But I didn't know any of this. No one told me, so it's not my fault. What are you saying as a manager? It's only natural you should take the initiative to oversee your department. The CEO chastised Lena, exasperated. I then vented the feelings I had bottled up directly to Lena. Are you making excuses, saying it's not your fault? The factory systems were deleted just because no one informed you. Are you blaming others for the situation you created? It's Bob's fault for not properly explaining about the patents when resigning. If he had clearly told me, this wouldn't have happened. No matter what was said, Lena refused to admit her fault. Seeing her stubbornly cry and shift blame, the CEO heaved a deep sigh. You're my late brother's daughter, so I had you work at the company to honor his wishes. But after this incident, I can no longer overlook your actions. Your education may be impressive, but your work ethic and contributions to the company are far more incompetent. Firmly rebuked by her uncle, the CEO, Lena clenched her fists in frustration and hung her head, seemingly reflecting on her actions. The CEO turned away from Lena to face me directly. Bob, I'm sorry this happened, but please won't you return to the company? We need your capabilities. The CEO's words genuinely delighted me, and I felt my cheeks relax into a smile. Moreover, if I didn't return, not only would the company grind to a halt, but many employees besides Lena and their families would be left to drift. That was never my intent, and this seemed like a good opportunity for the CEO to hear about the patience I had exercised. After contemplating, I responded, Your words mean a lot to me, CEO. If possible, I would like to continue my systems work at this company as before. However, if you have any dissatisfactions or requests, feel free to voice them. Seeing the concern on the CEO's face as he looked at me intently, I decided to speak up boldly. For me to return to the company, I have one condition. that Lena leaves the company. You mean get fired from the company? Lena reacted most promptly to my words, suddenly breaking her silence to protest angrily as she confronted me. But the CEO stated matter-of-factly, "If that's all it takes, you can return immediately. In that case, you are fired. Pack your things and leave right now." While I felt relieved that the CEO readily accepted my request, Lena panicked. "Wait a minute. While my blunder was inexcusable, firing me outright is too extreme. What are you saying? Didn't you essentially force Bob out of the company in this manner?" the CEO coolly pointed out. Lena teared up, dumbfounded for a moment, but realizing the CEO would not change his mind, she turned her focus to me pleadingly. Bob, I'm really sorry. I misunderstood you and said such awful things." Giving me an ingratiating look, Lena switched to a sacker tone. "I'll apologize for everything, so won't you come back? You can keep working as before. An apology won't suffice. Don't be so insolent. You need to take responsibility for causing this uproar," the CEO admonished sternly. Lena frantically tried to backpedal. "Please wait. I've deeply reflected. I'll be careful to prevent any such situations from now on." "It seems you still fail to grasp the gravity of your actions. More than anything, you've lost the essential element of trust," the CEO stated firmly. Rebuked so harshly, Lena dissolved into heavier sobs. She repeatedly apologized afterward, but the CEO's anger remained unyielding as he ordered her to take a leave of absence. Finally seeming to accept that no amount of apologies would be accepted, Lena muttered under her breath as she stood up abruptly and left the company premises. Afterwards, Lena never returned to the company. Even when summoned after her leave ended, she repeatedly missed appointments, offering excuses each time to avoid coming in. Eventually, Lena was officially fired from the company, but being fired did not absolve her of the consequences of her actions. The CEO filed a claim against the former manager, Lena, for damages caused to the company. Further claims for losses from factories and clients who couldn't operate during the outage pile on debts, forcing her to flee back to her family home. Attempts at finding new employment seemed futile. Not only was she aging, but she was reportedly too selective about the work as well, leaving her without any prospects. In the end, her relative managed to arrange a stay-in job for her through connections, and she seems to be working steadily. The debt is an amount that she can never pay back, but she has no choice but to keep working until the debt is gone. As for me, after that incident, I was asked by the CEO to return to the company. Thankfully, thanks to the CEO's consideration, I was able to remain on unpaid leave instead of resigning. When I reported the series of events at the company to my family, my wife and daughter both showed me smiles. Apparently, without me realizing it, I had been showing a terribly distressed expression at home for some time, and the two of them were very worried about me. When I saw my colleagues welcoming me back with great joy on the day I returned, I finally felt relieved. The system for the entire factory was immediately restored to normal operation from the backup I had, but of course I had to follow up afterwards since they had faced inconvenience for several days. In this way, everything returned to how it was before. Director Lena appeared except for one difference. I became the director of the development department. Until now, I had been enjoying the on-site work more than anything else, so I had turned down promotions to director. However, this incident taught me how much trouble an incompetent person in a managerial position can cause. To prevent such a situation from happening again, I resolved to become the director myself and lead the development department. Fortunately, the CEO has been taking extra care of his health since then and has regained his energetic demeanor. In order to repay the company and the CEO, I will continue to do my utmost from now on.